Hello, VC people, it's Matt, and I will be back with another Ringo review maybe next week. But today I thought I would do a contest entry for, her name is Marichen. I hope I'm saying that right, Lehman. And I just found out about her channel yesterday. Here, if you're interested in looking it up, and I suggest that you do, is her name. I learned about her channel from another channel that I just heard about last week, and that is a girl named Emma who goes by the name 8 Vinyl Low. And she had a contest going on that I wanted to enter, but I missed the deadline, and someone else that I'm subscribed to had made an entry, and that's how I found out about that. But anyway, Emma is likes a lot of music. She's a huge Cheap Trick fan, and rightfully so, because they're tops. Matter of fact, I'm playing this on the turntable yesterday and today, so yep, can't get enough Cheap Trick. Anyway, Marichen is having a contest, and she's wanting us to show 5 albums that shaped our musical taste, personality, outlook, however you want to best say that. So thought that was a really good contest question. I don't remember seeing anyone else do that before, but let's get right into it. So we're going to start with an obvious album. You guys might have heard of this band. I've told this story before, but I'll run through it as quick as I can. Again, I was born in '63. The Beatles showed up about 5 months after I was born, so obviously I wasn't paying a whole lot of attention. But as a little kid, I was always aware of them because my older brothers, my cousin was their age, lived around the corner. She was over there, and then their friends of their age, and they were 9, 10, 12 years older than me, so they were the perfect age to tune in when the Beatles showed up and sort of grow up with them. And I remember just in general, Beatles and other music being them playing records, and then the radio in the car and so forth. I specifically remember Strawberry Fields and Penny Lane. Specifically remember Hey Jude. I remember another of their bunch, Julie and Shelley, the 2 girls that were twins, used to babysit me. Their grandmother lived across the street from us, and I remember them sitting on the curb with the transistor radio playing Hey Jude and singing along. I was 4 or whatever at the time. I remember my brothers and Karen Sue and John and Larry and that bunch coming home with Sergeant Pepper when it came out and going in the den to play it, and chasing me out saying, you go play with the other little kids, and my parents in the other room, and aunt and uncle and friends playing canasta. But even though I was aware of them, I didn't really pay much attention one way or the other. So I jumped forward. I did, I think, like 1st and 2nd grade for a short time. I was into the Partridge Family and the Osmonds and the Jackson 5 because they all had TV shows at the time. 2 of them were cartoons. One of them was a live action show. That didn't last too long because it didn't take me too long to figure out that this music kind of sucks, even though I had gotten my mom and grandmom to buy me a few 45s by those bands. Jackson 5 I still like, but not so much an Osmond or Partridge Family fan since 1971 or whatever. But so it's 1973, and there's a kid, I can't remember his name now. He moved away about the time we were in 5th grade or so, never saw him again. But I would have been in 3rd grade at this time, so about 9 years old. And he and I were outside playing. It starts raining, so we go into my house and we're watching, the Flintstones and Speed Racer and Lost in Space and all that good stuff. And my brothers by that time were out of the house. They were in college and had apartments and stuff, but they'd left a lot of stuff behind. We had one of those big console stereo systems from back in the day where you lifted the top and there was a record player and all that. Stack of records against the wall by the stereo. So this kid goes over and he's flipping through the records, and he grabs Three Dog Night album, puts it on the album that has the song One on it. One is the loneliest number. Okay, I thought that's pretty cool. So I'd heard it on the radio, I was aware of it, but I thought, yeah, yeah, that's pretty cool, I guess. And then he plays that a couple of times, and then he grabs Led Zeppelin 2, who I don't know, really aware of, but I vaguely aware of, and Whole Lot of Love, which is way better than one. Thought, well, that's a good song. So he's playing that, and I'm halfway paying attention, halfway watching the adventures of Racer X and the robot on Lost in Space or whatever's on. But eventually I wander over and I go flipping through the stack of albums, and I come across this. And this, like I said, my brothers, I don't know which one, but one of them or both of them or whatever, had bought this this isn't the copy, this is a later copy that I got later, but I bought this in '67 new, so it was always around the house, and I just, remember seeing it, and I'm sure I heard some of the songs, I'm sure they were on the radio, obviously Penny Lane, Strawberry Fields, but just never, you know. So I thought, well, let me see what that is, and I put that on. First song, of course, is the title song, Magical Mystery Tour, and it's just like atom bombs going off in my head. I mean, it just blew my mind, just knocked me to the floor. So I play it again, and and again. Well, this other kid, he was not as crazy about the Beatles as I was, obviously, because he went to put the Three Dog Night album back on. And I said, yeah, we're about to eat here pretty soon, so I guess you need to go on home. And he did. So I spent the rest of the night playing. I don't know how many times I played Magical Mystery Tour in a row, but I finally played through the rest of the side of the album, and then I finally turned it over, and every song on there just completely floored me. And so my brothers had I don't know, 3 or 4 other Beatle albums there. They didn't have all of them, but they had several of them. And so in the next days and weeks, I explored this, and I explored the other ones they had, Revolver, Hard Day's Night, and so forth. And just basically from the opening notes of this was instantly Beatle crazy, something that endures to this very day and doesn't show any signs of going away anytime soon. And then I, bugged my parents about other Beatle albums that they didn't have, and 45s and so forth, and magazines and books about the Beatles where I could find them. Because in this, 1973, no internet, you couldn't just go and learn everything instantly, no Amazon to find the books and so forth. And so it was this wonderful journey of learning about the Beatles. But I used this because this is the album that kicked it all off for me, but also because it wasn't just the Beatles. Through most of the 70s, I was Beatle crazy and then solo Beatle crazy, but this also led to the Rolling Stones, the Kinks, the Who, the Yardbirds, the Small Faces, and in turn that led to the girl group stuff and the garage rock stuff and Jimi Hendrix and Moby Grape and Love and Syd Barrett and Pink Floyd and Fairport Convention, all that 60s music, in other words. So that was the big bang that led to all that. And I love a lot of music. My favorite music of all time is 60s rock and roll, specifically British 60s rock and roll, but 60s rock and roll in general. And it all started, of course, with the Fab Four. Now, the other one that I like, and I remember running across a box of 45s that belonged to one of my brothers, and there were Beatles 45s, and there was a couple of Monkees, and some of the one-hit wonder things. Good Lovin' was in there, and anyway, there was 2 or 3 Motown 45s, and I don't have many more. Wish I did, but something by the Supremes and a couple by the Temptations, the Four Tops. I don't remember the specific ones. That led to a deep and still enduring love of soul music, and I don't have it, so I'm going to go and show this album, which is a great album that everyone should have, I think, or every music lover, Otis Redding. But I found in time a box set, it's a 4 or 5 album box set of Motown hits that was, and of course at this time, this is probably was a couple of years later, so I was probably about 11, 12, something like that. And, you know, kids, so you didn't have money, but I scraped together enough money to buy that. It was more expensive than a single album, but cheaper than a double album, and you got 4 or 5 albums, and it was all chock full of gold. So from those Motown 45s and from that little, well, not little, but from that box set of Motown records, greatest hits, I spread out into all the Motown stuff, all the Stax stuff like Otis, Curtis Mayfield, Sly and the Family Stone, Funkadelic, all the soul stuff, and then, you know, some of the, back when they called it R&B in the 50s, which was what became soul music, which is kind of funny because the stuff they call R&B nowadays is landfill crap and doesn't sound anything like the good old R&B of the old days. But anyway, I digress. So since I don't have that Motown box set anymore, I showed an Otis album, but soul music, and that would be probably my second favorite music of all time after just 60s rock and roll, just the soul music from the R&B days of the, I don't know, late 40s, early 50s up until about 79 or 80, and once disco came along, and then rap, soul music sort of, and funk sort of petered out, I guess. But anyway, soul music. Now, being that I was 6 when the 70s started and 16 when they ended, that was sort of my growing up years, and a lot of the popular music on the radio and so forth in the 70s was not to my liking, and a lot of it still isn't. I was a big Beatle fan, and of course, within the 70s, I got into the Rolling Stones and Who and Kinks and so forth. So, you know, a lot of kids at school were like, well, that old-timey music, which old-timey meaning it's like 4, 5, 6 years old at that point. It was okay back in the day, but you should listen to the cool groups like Boston and Styx and Kansas and Fleetwood Mac and Peter Frampton and Kiss and all that. I didn't like any of that stuff. I'm not saying that there was, I mean, on some of those bands I like maybe a couple of songs. Some of those bands I didn't like any songs at all. And it's not saying there's nothing that I liked. I like Feeling Stronger Every Day by Chicago, like some ELO songs, like some Elton John songs, other stuff. But by and large, I was more interested in 60s music than I was in the current music. And I was thinking, man, it'd be nice to have been a kid in the 60s when all that stuff was brand new to experience it. Or it would be nice if there was some great, fun, cool, good new music now to experience. And right about the time I said that, along comes the whole punk rock new wave revolution, which, being in Texas and in America, unfortunately, and to this day I have no idea why they didn't, but radio didn't play that stuff, so you heard about it but you didn't hear it. And again, being a kid, and by this time I'm whatever, 12, 13 or so, still a kid with no money, so you can't just run out and buy all these albums at the record store because I didn't have the money to do it. But slowly and surely, because I was reading Rolling Stone, Cream, Trouser Press magazines and so forth back in those days, and they were talking about all this great new music called punk and new wave, and had my interest up. But since it wasn't on the radio, I wasn't going to go spend $6 for an album, and it turns out to be crap. Along comes this show called Friday, or Fridays, which I don't remember how long it lasted. It was on maybe a year or two. Kramer from Seinfeld was on it, and it was a copycat show to try to match the success of Saturday Night Live. Basically the same show. They had skits, and they had guest star each week, and they had a musical guest star each week. One of the weeks, these guys came on, and I'd heard of them but never heard of them, and they played Train in Vain and a couple other songs, and I thought, man, that's pretty good stuff. So I went out, and I don't have this on vinyl any longer, unfortunately. I need to get a copy on it. But so I got together the money, and I went out and bought this sort of a leap of faith, with only knowing that one song, and I couldn't remember the other song they sang on the Friday show. But yeah, so I got home and played it, and it's funny because at the time it sounded incredibly strange and different and weird, and I wasn't exactly sure at first whether I liked this stuff or not, but it was intriguing enough that I played it again and again and again and again, and quickly grew on me and dawned on me that yeah, this is good. And it's funny I say, because this all sounded very different, that this and the other punk rock and new wave stuff in general, and now when I listen to it, it just sounds like rock and roll. But I mean, you know, you can tell the difference between this and 50s stuff and 60s stuff, but still it just basically sounds like rock and roll. A buddy of mine, I mentioned the Clash, and he said, well, have you heard their first album? I hadn't. He had it and let me borrow it, so I'll just show that too. Anyway, either of these would be my choice for the best album of the 70s. This came out in England, and it didn't come out in America for a couple of years later. It was a big import seller. The controversy on London Calling, is it a 70s or 80s album, of course, because it came out in December of 79 in England and January of 80 in America. But anyway, either or of those, I would say best album of the 70s. So that led me to the Sex Pistols and the Jam and Joy Division and Elvis Costello and the Buzzcocks and all this great music, and of course on into the 80s. And so that was a revelation, and it was fun to find great new music in that wonderful period of 78, 79 up to about 83 or so, where you just had all these great bands. It was maybe not quite as great, but almost as great, or right up there with the 60s. So there's that. Back in the 70s, one of my favorite shows, I still like to watch reruns, Sanford and Son. I'd heard blues music, I guess, on like cartoons and stuff when they played it as background music. One of the episodes has B.B. King on it. He plays The Thrill Is Gone. I thought, wow, man, that's pretty cool. And this would have been, I don't know, 76, 77. And I actually got the 45 of that, and I don't have it anymore, but I'm going to show this guy instead because I don't think I have any B.B. King stuff right now. Big Bill Broonzy is one of the great blues artists. He died in 58. I think George or Ringo, one of the Beatles, saw him in concert because he went over and did shows in England, including Liverpool. But anyway, B.B. King got me into the blues, and then seeing the movie The Blues Brothers a few years later in 1980 sort of increased my interest, and from there I sort of spread out and got into Robert Johnson and Broonzy and B.B. King and Muddy Waters. And so I'm not going to say this is the one that did it, because it would have been that B.B. King Thrill Is Gone 45 and that appearance on Sanford and Son, but since I don't have that, I'll show this instead. And we'll wrap it up with music that I'm still not an expert on, but I do like. Some of it's kind of boring, some of it's really good. If it's good, it's really good. If it's not so good, it's just sort of pedestrian. But Love Supreme and Jazz, John Coltrane, and this led to Miles Davis and just a whole bunch of blues stuff. I've got jazz stuff. I've got pretty good collection of jazz stuff, and it's music that I'm still exploring and learning about. So there's the 5 albums, and I hope I'm in time before the deadline. If not, it's no big deal. It was fun to make the video. So alright, American, good luck with your channel, plenty more subscribers, and everyone else, have a great weekend. We'll talk to you later.